Right, you in this JavaScript question, we are going to see whether we are inserting string or not. If I click on check, it will show true for the string, and for a quick note, it is always true because the input tag always return the string. Fine. Now let me create a class, and let me create the object of that class to show you what I'm going to do. We will be using the prototypes object.prototypes. So if I console log it, you'll see the we have declared it as variable. We don't have to use let. And if you check it, you see we are getting the object, and inside that we have a prototypes, and inside the prototypes we have a function called toString. We are going to use that. So let me comment it. You got the idea, I guess. Now let's call the input tag with the help of query selector in JavaScript, and I'm going to store this input tag to a variable called input. The same way I'm going to do it for the button. I'm going to call the button and I'm going to store it into a variable called button. So to get the input value, I'll be using the property dot value. Now I'm going to add a click event to the button. So this is how we add event listener. The first one is the event, and the second one is the callback function. What should happen when I click on it? So simply I need a message called hello in the alert box. So let's check whether it is working or not, and that is working fine. Now what I need is I'm going to get the input value. When I click on a button, I want the input text to be visible on the console. That's not working, so let me take the input dot value over here inside the event. Fine, now you can see we are getting the input value. Now as I said, we will be using the object keyword. Inside the object we have a property called prototype, it's a singular, and again we have a function toString, and inside the toString we are going to call a function call, and we would be passing either its number or its array or its string. So let me check what it is returning. If I insert number, let me comment the input value for a second. It doesn't matter what you insert, but we are passing the number and we are getting the string as object number. Now I'm passing the string, which is my name, and we will be getting object name inside the square bracket. So we'll use the condition. If it is returning, we'll pass the input text value, and if it is returning a string, object string, then just show the message on the console as yes, it's string. It says yes, it's string, because input field always gets the value and convert it to string. Now I'm passing the hard code value, it's number. If I click on check, you'll see it's not working. Let me see why. I'm passing the number, and it's not. Now I have to make it number over here. Now you'll say yes, it's number, because we are passing the hard code value, not the value from the input. Let me comment this, and if you want, this is a string, and if you want to show an array, it is also possible. Now I'm going to show the number, object number. Now let me show you the array, and it will say object array. This is how we check whether it is an array, whether it is a number, or whether it is a string. And to make you clear understand, the input field always gets the value as a string, and just for showing you I have used to get the value from the string and displayed the message. Fine. Even if I enter 1 2 3, it is going to say it is string. I'm passing number, it is saying it is string. Even if I pass my string, it is my name as a string, it is going to say it is string. And even if I pass the array, it's an object. Even if I pass object, it is going to say it is string. And again, if I pass the array inside the text field, it is again going to say it is string. This is a default behavior of the input field in HTML. Fine, let's get into the second question, which is the second JavaScript interview question, and check whether the inserted value is blank or not. If it is empty, it will say it is empty. If I have filled something, let's say my name, and it says it is not empty. Fine, how we are going to do it? If I fill something on the text field and click on is empty, it says it's not empty. Fine, let me remove this code and start from scratch. You just have to worry about the input field and then button, and this is the heading. And again, we have to look for the input field. We don't need the ID for now. We have a button. As like the previous question, we need to get the input field and the button in the JavaScript. So for that, we will be using the query selector, and we'll be storing the value in the variable called input. And it says it's a variable, we need to pass a string. We're getting the input value. If I use query selector all, you're getting the node list, and I'm going to use a property called length. So for that, I am going to show you where I'm going to get the length. If you click on the input, it's an input. Since we have only one input, it shows a 0, the length is 1. Now we are getting the length is 2 because we have two inputs. If you click on the input, either one of the input, now let me make it 1. Now you see input is 0 because the index starts from 0, and inside that we have a property called length, or you can see the value. You can see the value is null. I'm going to use the value over here, get the input. We have to, since we have only one input, I'm using the query selector. Again, I'm going to use the query selector to get the button. So once I click on a button, I'm going to add an event listener, which is click. It's a default function. The callback function will come as a second parameter. And what we need is, when I click on a button, I want the input field value. That's not gonna work because we have to use a property dot value. Okay, let's remove this value property over here. Again, it says it's not working because we need to add a property called value, as I shown you where the value is coming from. Now it's blank, so that's why it is not showing up anything. Now you can see the value is now visible on the console. Now we are going to check if the input value, I have already shown you where the value is coming from. It is coming from the input dot value, the length of the value. Again, the length is also from the place where I have already showed you. If it is 0, then just show the message yes, it's empty. If it is not 0, the 0 is simply the length of the words. total length of the words. It says yes, it's empty. It's not empty. Now this is the third JavaScript interview question, and we are going to see the trim and split function in this video. Split the input value and convert it into an array of words. If I type my name as Vishal Varghese, I want the name to be converted to string, sorry, array. Now you can see the Dave Batista is now in the array form. So I'm splitting the words according to the space. So let's get the input text, and let's call the button on the JavaScript as like what we do with the help of query selector. Let's call the input tag, and let me store the input tag into a variable called input, and the value will not have any effect until and unless you add a click listener to it, click listener to a button. So again we are going to do it for the button as well. Let's add a event listener click to the button. So let me show a simple alert message on button click. Now let's get the input value. It is not going to work because we need to get the input value on button click. We are not getting anything, as you can see. So what you have to do is you have to get this value on button click. Now we are going to use the split. I want to split on every letter. So for that I have used the split function. Now you can see the every letter is now splitted to array, splitted as an array. Now I need to split it on the space, so I have passed space over here. Now if you see, if I pass space on front and after the word, you can see the space is over here and the space is over here. You can see there are space, as you can see there are useless space on the front and back. I don't need that, so for that I will be using the trim function. Even if I pass the string with some more spaces, you will be getting the trimmed word, not in between but on both sides, and that's working. We have used the trim and a split in this video. Now this is the another question. In this question we are going to see the slice and the split function, just only the slice function. So what we need is, we need a specific number of characters from a string. So if I pass a value, a string, and I want only the first letter, or you can say I want only the three letters, I'll say I'll pass the I'll pass it as 3. If I want the first 6 letter, I'll pass 6. If I want the first letter, I'll pass 1. Now I need a second letter, first and second letter. Now I need first, second and third letter, so I'm passing 3. Let me create it from scratch. Now we have to see, I have used the ID to input field, to both the input field, to identify both of them. So previously we were using query selector, now it's getting element by ID, and I'm going to store the element as an variable. Again for the same, for I did the same for the second one. So let's have a event listener click to the button, we know this what this function does because we have already seen 3 questions ahead, and we already know it is not going to work because we have to place the we have to get the value property inside the button click. So if the length is not a 0, and that's if the string length is not 0, and if the numeric length is not less than a 0, so it's a simple condition before proceeding to a logic. If the string length is 0, we need to show the message as invalid inputs. We have not called it the button document.query selector button. It's an element and I'm going to store it into a variable called button. Fine. Now you can see the value is blank, that means the length is 0, and again if I pass 1, the first one is returning false and the second one is returning true, and that's why we are getting the invalid output. I have used AND operator, that means both the value should be true. Fine. If you want to paste it over here, you can also do it inside the function. Now we don't need this because we have defined it inside the button click listener. Now we need to do the actual logic. We have to get the string value. Now we're getting the valid input because the length of the string is not 0 and the number is not less than 0. Now get the string value and use the slice. The slice will start from 0 and end till the number which we have passed. Let me store it into a new variable called new string, and I want to show the new string on the console. The slice what simply does is it starts from 0, zeroth index of the string till the index what we have passed from 0 to 5. Now starting from v is 0 and I is 1 and so on. Now this is another JavaScript interview question. We are going to convert the name into the abbreviated form. You can see I'm passing my full name, but I'm getting it as an abbreviated form. The second name, we are getting it as only the first letter followed by the dot. Now I'm passing a big name. The first name will be full. The second name is only the first letter. Fine. Now let's get the input field and let's get the button as like we do. In the next tutorial I'll be using the on click function. This is how we get the button. This is how we get the input field. Sorry for that. And this is how we get the button element, and I'm going to store it into a variable, and let me add a click listener to the button, and that click, what it should do when I click on it, I want this function to get executed. I'll simply get the input field when I click on the button. It doesn't matter whatever you enter it is not going to work. We have to pass input dot value, or you can simply define it inside the button. You can see I have made a mistake because if you use the value over here, it is not important to use value on the message. Button is not defined because it is defined inside the click listener. That's why the order is important in JavaScript. Now I want the input value to get trimmed, and I want to split it as an array on space. We know what happens when we split the string to an array. Let me store this value to a variable called in array form. Now we know we are getting the two values. We can access it with the index name. 0 will refer to the first one, 1 will refer to the second one. This is 0 and this is 1. Now let's see. If I pass two names, you will get the two name one below the other, because 0 is referring to the Vishal and the 1 is referring to the Vargesh. Fine, let me store it into a variable called first name, first string, and the second one is for the second string. We need to perform some logic on the second string, not on the first string. We will keep the first string as same, but we want the second string just the first letter. To get only the first letter, we can use the char at function. So first name, first string, then space, then concatenate with the second name. We know the second string will just have the first single letter. Now we are getting the single letter with the help of char at function. If you pass 2, if you pass 1, you will get the second string of the first letter, second string of the second letter, which is A. If I pass 0, now I will get the second string's first letter. Let's pass some other name. Now I will see. And that's all for this video. Thank you so much for listening.